So I thought I'd record this video and make sure you don't make these mistakes solving quadratic equations. Here's a situation. There's two ways to tackle this, and probably the first way and the easiest way is I'm just going to solve this for x squared. So I'm going to add 9 to both sides of this equation. That leaves me x squared equals 9. Then the problem is, here's the problem. You're going to take the square root of both sides. That's not the problem. But when you take a square root, you got to remember that there's a positive answer and a negative answer, because either one of these, if I go back to the original answer, so let's finish this. So I'm saying the answers are plus or minus 3, because if you substitute in negative 3 into that original equation, you're going to get 0. And if you substitute in positive 3 into that original equation, you're also going to get 0. So that's why we need it. When we start graphing these things, and maybe that won't happen until pre-calculus, but it should happen this semester. If in regular algebra 2 class, it should. So you'll see why we need the 2. Okay, so remember, when you take a square root, you need plus or minus. Another way to solve this is to think, oh, this is the difference of two squares. This factors to x plus 3, x minus 3 equals 0. And then you can see you're going to have those two answers right there. So, you know, it's your choice whichever way to go. I honestly like the factoring method better, but because that way I don't make that mistake of missing the two answers. So this one, I just said I like the factoring method, but unfortunately this is not the difference of two squares, because 18 is not a square. So I'm going to add 18 to both sides. I'm going to take the square root. So that's going to give me plus or minus the square root of 18. And then in this day and age, you could grab a calculator, but I also think it's worth it remembering how to simplify a radical. And I know 18 is 9 times 2. And I want to use 9 and 2 and not 6 and 3, because I can take the square root of 9. So that's going to give me 3 square roots of 2. And then because of the plus or minus, the other answer is negative 3 square roots of 2. So those are the best answers. You could certainly grab a calculator and do the square root of 18 and remember the positive of it and the negative of it. We'll have to see if Julie likes that. I mean, it is her course. We've got to make sure that she's happy with that. So this one looks very similar, right? I'm going to say 35 is not a perfect square. I'm going to subtract it from both sides. Unfortunately, I can't take the square root of a negative number, so there's no solution. And that square root of a negative number is a problem. So you've walked through the lesson on this, so this is not new. So when you're solving by completing the square, and sometimes it's easier, what I do is I leave myself a space where the 1 was, or wherever that C term is. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take half of the 8, half of negative 8, and then square it. And that's the part about completing the square. And what I'll do, I will write add negative 4, and then I'll square it. I mean, there's nothing wrong with writing 16 there, but you'll see why. Now over here I am going to write 16. And I've got to add, because I don't want to change this equation, so I've got to add, I've got to add the 16 to both sides. Right? I guess I got to rewrite this. Let's see. So add negative 4 squared. So on the right I get 15. On the left, I completed the square and made this be x minus 4 times x minus 4. So that's one reason why I didn't write 16, because I knew whatever I wrote here was going to be just dropped in right here. So that's why I don't do that. But it's up to you. You know, it's not wrong to do it the other way. So now I'm going to take the square root of both sides. And remember, when you take the square root of both sides, you're going to have a plus or minus. Whoops, and I'm trying to write the plus or minus too quickly. Equals the plus or minus the square root of 15. And 15 is not going to simplify because that's 3 times 5. I can't make that any simpler. And then I'm going to add 4. So I'm going to get 4 plus square root of 15. 4 minus the square root of 15 are the two answers. Okay, so we're going to use that same thing, same equation using the quadratic formula. We already know the answer. You got to remember that the quadratic formula is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2 times a, where in this problem a is 1, b is negative 8, c is 1. So to solve it for x, I'm going to write negative negative 8 turns it to positive 8, plus or minus the square root of negative 8 squared. Now it's certainly alright to write, people do this, negative 8 squared. In fact, why don't I guess. So 4 times 1 times 1, because it's a and c. And this is all over 2a, and that's 2 times 1. Now what I'll typically do with this kind of problem is I will write this as 64. I won't write the negative 8 squared. And then I will often write out the 1 times 1 all over 2. So then what I'm going to do is simplify underneath the square root, and that's a problem place for people. What you got to think about is going to be 64 times, then you're going to multiply the 4, the negative 4 times whatever a is times whatever c is. In this case it's pretty easy because it's just 4. That's over 2. And then again underneath the square root, well, 64 minus 4 is 60 over 2. And then you can think about, oh, let's see, 4 times 15 is 60. So 8 plus or minus 2 times the square root of 15, because the square root of 4 is 2. And then that 2 cancels out the 8 and that 2 there, so that's going to leave me 4 plus or minus root 15 over 1, which we don't have to worry about. And that's what we got on that other one we did by calculating the square. So these are the problems that I saw people have on the couple of assignments that I've graded. So I thought it would help you out. Give a yell if you need some more help.